Hi, so in this video, I want to go over just basically the pituitary gland, some important things to know about that. We'll do dark red for this one. So the pituitary gland and the portal system. So it's going to be a really short video. Basically, just understand the pituitary gland is part of the brain. It's really important for, it's generally considered part of the brain, although developmentally, it sort of actually comes from a different spot. But it has neural tissue, and it has glandular tissue, so that's why you call it a gland. And it's really important for our hormonal system. And so over here we've got just a brief outline. Brain, there's your pituitary gland, sort of hangs off. It's really tricky to get a brain out of the body in dissection with the pituitary gland still connected, because it's just really hanging on there by a little thread. And I've even exaggerated the size here. It's actually really quite small and hanging on by just a really tiny little portion. And if you were to zoom in, it looks sort of like this. It's got these two parts, the anterior pituitary gland and the posterior pituitary gland. And the posterior one is actually going to be composed of neural tissue. So we've got neurons coming down here. And the anterior one is actually going to be composed actually I should write anterior here, so you know, anterior, or too many R's, anterior, and it's going to be composed of glandular tissue. And so what will actually have happen here is that we can have neurons stimulating this posterior one, and they will release hormones that will only travel in sort of this portal system they can only really go in blood vessels that go between. These are supposed to be blood vessels. I don't know if you can tell. That will go between these two different sides, the anterior and the posterior. And then the anterior can release hormones that will go to the general circulation of the blood, and then can affect different parts of the body. For example, what we'll have is we'll have as an example, a hormone released from the anterior pituitary gland, which will actually go to the kidney, adrenal gland, and that will stimulate the release of cortisol, as an example. And so we'll have stimulation from the nervous system, and it will also be able to help result in stimulation of this glandular part, which will result in the release of hormones from all over the body and to all over the body. Another important thing to know is that we often call this the neural hypophysis, and we'll call this the adeno hypophysis. And that is because the neural hypophysis has neural tissue and the adeno hypophysis has glandular tissue.